Good morning. My name is Olivia Hart. I am here on behalf of Misty Upham's family. Amanda Upham asked me to read a statement for her. Before I read the statement, I do want to add that as a scholar, I have a master's in public administration and tribal governance. I happen to be a decolonizing researcher and an activist. The fact that women of color, Native women, Indigenous women, are not identified is the first problem that I personally see. I also think that the second issue is that there's a lack of resources, and the third is that barriers are not identified, and that identification needs to happen through this study. Tribal consultation isn't enough. We don't necessarily agree just because we sit down at the table. We do want to have a dialogue, but I think most importantly, the collaboration needs to take place. I want to recognize the people that are sitting in this room and the families that have been impacted. I personally had the opportunity and the grave misfortune of helping on a search party for Misty Upham. And there is nothing more devastating than to watch family members going through the woods, looking for their loved ones, making phone calls, and having law enforcement not actively engage with them. In fact, the chief of police of the Auburn Police Department was quoted as saying, "Why would we look for a missing or dead girl?" Actually, I misquoted. Why would we be looking for a dead girl? So I am personally affected by this, so please take that under consideration as well. Here is the statement from Amanda. "We knew her better than anybody else. When my sister Misty Upham went missing, we knew something was wrong. We called the police immediately and requested to file a missing persons case. We were denied. The reasons given were she was an adult, free to leave the house if she wanted to. She's fine, probably, at a friend's house. Even after we mentioned she was a danger to herself because she was on prescription medications for anxiety and bipolar disorder. She was never out of contact with her family. Even when she was in disagreement with us, she was very close to her parents, and it was unlike her not to contact them. This is how we knew something was wrong. After several attempts to contact the Auburn Police Department requesting a search party or fire and rescue teams, we were still denied. It took a search team of 4 people, which included her father, Charles Upham, and her uncle, Robbie Upham. It took them 5 hours to find her. This was 11 days after she went missing. So by this point, we know that the family had already contacted the police department and tried to get assistance. So 11 days goes by, and this is a very famous Native American actress as well. So, that the status doesn't really help in finding someone. There's no privilege just because she's somebody, because she's Native. And that is, my ad lib there. Because I will touch on the fact that I think this is tied to bias and racism, and that's the reason why no help is happening. And no one wants to talk about that. And maybe this study will address that or find that to be the case as part of the problem. Anyway, she was found dead at the bottom of a ravine. She had fallen from a cliff half a block away from her sister's apartment, so it was right around the corner. Although searching for her on day one may or may not have saved her life, we could have known much sooner that her fate was sealed and possibly could have had an open casket funeral. The whole time, as my sister was a famous Native American actress, the media was contacting my family and the Auburn Police Department, and the police were giving a very different version of the story than what we were giving. So even with the reporting, the media is going to say one thing and the police department says another, and I personally saw that it was just a hot mess. They said they were doing all the things that they could do to find her, and when in actuality, they did nothing. When the police were called after her body was found, instead of commending the small search party for their efforts, they treated them as criminals and suspects in a potential murder. So these are family members now that are being treated horribly by the police department for actually actively finding their own family member, which again took only 5 hours. Amateurs. When the chief of police of Auburn was asked why they didn't do more to help find her, his response was, "Why would we look for a dead girl?" To this day, we still have not received her personal belongings from the Auburn Police Department. Our emails and calls directed to the Auburn Police Department and the mayor of Auburn have gone unanswered. The medical examiner has deemed her cause of death undetermined because of the Auburn Police Department's lack of investigation into Misty's death. Nearly 4 years later, we are still unsure if she died by accident, murder, or suicide. I can't help but feel that this is an issue solely based on race, and because my sister, Misty Upham, was a Native American woman, her missing persons case and death got swept under the rug. I feel the major barriers in this problem are racial, and the community ties between tribal and city police need to be stronger. I think that the cultural barriers need to be broken, the barriers that drive racism and discrimination, and the ignorance that stems from that. These Native women that are missing and murdered are mothers, daughters, sisters, and our loved ones, missed and cherished just as much as any mother or sister from a Caucasian family. This is one truth that seems to escape the minds of these policemen and their negligence in the missing, murdered Indigenous women's cases. And that's Amanda Upham's statement. And the last thing I'll add is finding our loved ones is a right that needs to be honored and respected. We all know the importance of finding our missing soldiers, our missing loved ones, you know. It's just a basic human right, and you'd find that universally under the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. We're very careful about our burial rights. Now, this thing with discrimination happens every day. No less than 3 times today, myself personally, was I mistreated, abused, just coming here today for a hearing. I mean, I was personally accosted by one of your security officers just because I had an extra seat next to me, and I took a picture and there were 35 other seats open. And that is absolutely unacceptable behavior that happens all the time. And it is a form of racism. You know, we need to all get to the point where we understand that racism creates a situation where we get overlooked because we're not considered first. Those seats in the front row are supposed to be for, I think, anyone who's coming here to testify, not the elite, not the people that work here. And I've had the pleasure of working as a lobbyist as well, and I'm not one today. Okay, that is disgusting behavior. This is a government for the people, by the people, all the people. Indigenous people have a dual national status that needs to be respected. It's government to government. As sovereign nations, we bring a lot of money, because that seems to be the thing that everybody hears and talks about, into the state. But just because we have our tribal casinos or other successful businesses doesn't mean that we should have to self-fund everything. And certainly a family should never have to go out alone, traipsing through the woods for 3 days, because before that 5-hour find, there was 3 days of days and nights of so many people just showing up trying to do anything. You know, that's unacceptable. Now, the one thing I do know is Washington State has been a leader in many things, and I think that we can really successfully be a model, listen to each other, have Indigenous people at the top of the table, and have more meetings where we really care. Thank you.
Thank you.